Hi, this is Danny Korchmar from the Immediate Family.
And I'm Steve Postel from the Immediate Family.
And I'm Leland Sklar from the Immediate Family.
Hi, it's Waddy Wachtel from the Immediate Family.
Hi, it's Russ Kunkel from the Immediate Family. You're listening to Your Morning Coffee, the podcast with Jay Gilbert and Michael Etchart. Weekly music news for the new music business.
From The Guardian, pay to get playlisted? The accusations against Spotify's discovery mode.
And from Music Business Worldwide, Michael Rapino confirms Live Nation ticketing talks with Spotify, Apple, and Amazon for superfan tiers.
And the last from TikTok. TikTok and Luminate released their latest music impact report. And boy, there's some interesting stuff in that.
Yes, sir.
Well, Jay, it is good to see you, my friend. And I'm excited to get the show going. So let's start this show right about now.
Stand by for transmission.
This is London calling.
Wake up! The revolution is at hand! Your morning coffee is on the air. On the air. On the air. On the air. On the air.
Standing by.
Your morning coffee, the weekly music news for the new music business. It's the highly curated, agitated, advocated, moderated, and liberated digital music information that you need to know. We are your digital music authority. And now from our studios in Hollywood, California, here's your hosts, Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart.
Well, as I said, Jay, it is great to see you.
Good to see you.
The last time I saw you, I was on a boat, and that didn't turn out too well.
Yeah, I'm sorry you sort of caught the plague on that boat, but
we did.
But there was some good music, right?
Yeah, there was great. It was the Rock Legends Tour. I went on it with another couple, one of my oldest friends from elementary school, actually. And saw some great acts. Among them was it's somebody that I don't know, but John Waite, somebody you do know and work with. And he sounded fantastic. I think he's going to be 70 this summer. And he moved and sang like a 25-year-old.
Yeah, he's still got that voice, fantastic. Right?
Yes, it was. And I saw Styx as well, and they were fantastic. And again, you watch some of these acts, and, you and I played in bands for a long time. We've sung in bands, and just naturally, especially the male voice, it tends to lower with age. And yet I watched some of these artists sing in the original keys, the original
John
parts.
Waite's one of them. Tommy Shaw.
Shaw. It was unbelievable. So, and then I got sick.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that.
On a cruise, which sucks. And I missed going to Nashville with you to go over to Belmont University, and I was so crushed. But I'm going to guess you might have had a good time there.
Yeah, I did, and you were sorely missed. But the show must go on. I went to Nashville and had a lot of business meetings and had the pleasure of going over to Belmont University and doing sort of a presentation there. And special shout out to the great team over there. Brittany, Nadine was awesome. Amy, Caroline. It was just a joy. And those students, they came up with some of the best questions. And what we're going to do is we recorded that sort of guest lecture, and we'll get the audio for that. We're going to drop that as a special bonus episode. And speaking of bonus episodes, this week we have Molly Newman. We had just an incredible conversation. I have so much respect for her and what she's built. She's now the president of CD Baby, but she's got a rich past. And then another one the week after, we're dropping Richard Burgess, the CEO and president of A2IM. Just Richard, if you haven't met him or read his writings, he's just a legend in the music industry, and he's been around forever, and he's done, he produced Spandau Ballet's first album. I think he put one of the first drum machines in a popular song, but he's been around. Just a great conversation with Richard Burgess coming up. And just really quickly, special shout out to some friends of mine in Nashville who I got to spend some time with. Producer, manager Amber Beist. That was just a joy to go in the studio and see her at work. Eric Griffin and I met up. He's from the music business program over at Colorado State. Dear friend, and songwriter Brett James. He and I met at the Pinewood, and you and I were talking about the Pinewood. It's just such a fun place. It's kind of a hipster bowling alley / restaurant bar, and I've had so many great meetings there in Nashville. If you want to go to a fun place, check out the Pinewood in Nashville.
I would like to go there, having heard you discuss it, talking at least about the waffles, which we both are fans of. So that sounds great. Yeah. I forgot to mention to you, by the way, even though we've been talking for an hour already, I did catch the Sly Stone documentary that Questlove did last night.
Yes.
Or last night.
What did you think?
Fantastic.
Oh, wasn't it good?
Fantastic. So many things I did not know, and I thought I knew quite a bit about Sly Stone. But man, what a wonderful, and where they got a lot of the archival footage was
amazing
as well. And you just kind of got a sense of really how groundbreaking they were at the time.
Oh, yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, and people like Prince have always said, that was a big influence on him. And I'm glad you saw that. I absolutely loved it. Before we get into some of the stories from the newsletter, there's a new podcast that dropped that I want to tell people about. It's called After Dinner Thinks with Ann Wilson. And yes, it's that Ann Wilson from Heart. And typically when you do a podcast, and you know this as well as anyone, the first couple of episodes are a little bit ragged. You're trying to figure out the equipment and, what you want your podcast to be. And ours is no exception. This one doesn't suffer from that. I listened to it on the plane to Nashville, and it's just, there's something very soothing about Chris Kane's voice, Ann Wilson's voice. Those are the two people that are on the podcast talking to each other. And then they have this music going in the background that instantly lowers your blood pressure. If you've ever been to a doctor's office or a therapist's office or a dentist's office, not all of them, but sometimes they play this really cool, like lo-fi hip hop or this really ethereal type music that just sort of calms you down. And they have that going throughout the entire thing. And you would think it would be a distraction, but it is absolutely not. Anyway, After Dinner Thinks with Ann Wilson pilot episode is out now.
All right. Well, here's a few stories from the Your Morning Coffee this week. Spotify news, by the way. This is from The Verge. Spotify's hi-fi streaming could finally arrive this year. We've been talking about this for a long time.
A long time.
A $6 a month Music Pro tier could include lossless audio and perks like discounted concert tickets.
Yeah, and the question is that enough to get somebody to pay $5 or $6 more a month? It's been nearly 4 years since Spotify announced a hi-fi tier. So you and I have been talking about this for a while.
Yeah, seems like it. Sure.
And so to your point, could it support lossless audio? They think it might, that wait could end this year, Bloomberg reports, as Spotify works to finalize details, including streaming rights.
Right. Spotify could charge as much as $5 or $6 extra per month for the new tier, said to be named Music Pro, which is in line with estimates CEO Daniel Ek shared last year. Spotify's premium tier currently starts at $11.99 per month before family or student discounts. The result, of course, of 2 price hikes in as many years.
Yeah, and those are pretty minor price hikes. I think that streaming is still grossly underpriced, but
I agree.
We'll put that aside for a second. Competitors like Apple Music, they include lossless streaming in their services, in that base price. But Spotify reportedly plans to justify the extra charge by including more features in this Music Pro, including song remixing, which we'll talk about a little bit more in a minute, concert ticket sales, that would grant subscribers exclusive deals and maybe even early access. note, this article, there was also another article from Android Police that reported that the song remixing that we're talking about, that would be done with AI. Super interesting. We'll see.
Ooh, that is a big asterisk, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, we'll kind of keep an eye on that.
Yes.
Another story from our friends over at Billboard, Elias Light, how live stream video clips took over music marketing. Music marketers are increasingly focused on facilitating that second wave of engagement, which they do by snipping out the highlights of live streams, either relying on their own teams of editors or clippers who congregate on Discord or AI programs, and then promoting those bite-sized videos across TikTok, Instagram, X, and more.
Yeah, if you haven't spent time on Twitch, you really should. It's not just a gaming platform. There's so much music going on. I was watching a couple of channels with some friends of mine where they're actually writing and recording their album on Twitch. And you can dial in, and there's a great community, and people talk to you. Alec Henderson, he's the head of digital for APG. He said that Twitch is, in many ways, the new live TV, and the clips from live streams are just like TV reruns. Those highly engaged, entertaining moments can live online forever.
So the clipping practice has been popular in the Twitch streaming community for some time. That's according to Parker Ulrey, who runs the digital marketing agency Perfect Circle. He said the podcast community is super on it now, and music is falling in line.
Right. He goes on to say that ideally, someone discovers your Twitch stream or podcast interview through a 30-second clip, then goes back and consumes the whole piece. Then they become a fan of you and start streaming your music. Makes sense. It's sort of like almost like the TikTok model where you see a short clip and that drives you to your DSP of choice or to YouTube to, it's an entry drug.
Exactly. Once the clips are in hand, start pumping them into TikTok, Instagram, even YouTube Shorts, these algorithmically powered platforms, Ulrich says. One natural ally in this effort is fan pages, which are dedicated to posting nonstop about a particular artist or a group of artists.
Yeah, and note that these accounts can be created by the artist or their team or run by enthusiastic, fans with lots of time on their hands. Another, is what Falk calls community pages, accounts dedicated to a certain genre of music, for example. Pretty interesting stuff.
Right. Yeah, very interesting stuff. Another article over from Variety by Jem Oswald, James Blake, on how musicians can take control of their careers, touring, and releasing music off the grid. Now, by any measurement, by most measurements, James Blake is quite a successful musician, a popular Grammy-winning singer-songwriter, producer specializing in electronic-based pop-leaning music, who released 8 albums on major labels over the past decade. He sells out major venues regularly and has guested on songs by Jay-Z, Kendrick Lamar, Travis Scott, and Kanye West. He even performed with Timothée Chalamet on Saturday Night Live just this last month.
Yeah, anybody we've heard of? Jeez.
Exactly.
And yeah, like a lot of musicians, he said, I've been financially up and down since I started, a recurring cycle of doing really well and then almost broke. He said, there were random spikes of income, a few good gigs, a royalty check that might be low or might be high, but you don't know when any of it is coming in. And multiple times I thought, am I going to be the classic story of the artist who did well and then can't work out why they don't have any money?
Yeah, well, interesting stuff and interesting article. Another one from Music Watch. It's by Russ Krupnick. Is TikTok losing its shorts? According to Music Watch's latest audio census study completed in January, there are over 103 million music listeners on social media apps, video apps in the U.S., a rise of 80% since 2021. These listeners spend an average of 6.5 hours per week with music on social video apps, TSL, by the way, or about an hour per day. That doesn't include their time spent with other genres, such as comedy or how-to tips. Some of that time is intentional, with listeners seeking out songs and artists on these platforms, and some is passive, algorithmically fed music intended to keep viewers engaged.
Yeah, this is another great report from our friend Russ Krupnick. He's come on the podcast. We need to have him back on again.
We do.
His Music Watch is amazing. He says that TikTok gets most of the attention, but it doesn't get all of the quote unquote TSL. In fact, TikTok has stiffening competition from Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook when it comes to time spent listening to music on short-form video platforms. Year over year, TikTok dropped 5 share points in the music category to a 29% share. Combined, Meta has a 36 share, including both Instagram and Facebook, and YouTube Shorts came in with a 26 share, up 2 versus a year ago.
Interesting. Perhaps most shocking is TikTok's decline among its core constituents aged 13 to 24. TikTok's share fell 9 points from 51 to 42% among the younger demographic, with Instagram and YouTube picking up most of the difference. Among the 45 and older segment, TikTok lost 4 share points, while YouTube and Facebook actually posted gains.
Right. And Russ goes on to say that it's really hard to gauge whether TikTok's dip was due to uncertainty around the app's status in the US. We've been talking about that a lot, or a more organic shift to competitors. The key takeaway is that artists need to think broadly about social video. TikTok's been, it hasn't been the only game in town for quite some time. So we encourage you to check out that full report from Russ Krupnick in your morning coffee.
Yes, indeed. Well, Jay, before we jump into the stories, what do you say we thank some sponsors? Because darn it, we really appreciate their participation.
Yes, we really do. First off, we want to thank the MLC, the Mechanical Licensing Collective. The MLC is a nonprofit organization that's making a big difference for songwriters, music publishers, and other rights holders by really transforming how they receive mechanical streaming royalties from streaming services like Spotify, Apple Music in the United States. Every month, the MLC collects the streaming data and royalties from those platforms, and it matches the money to the creator who's earned it, and then it pays them or their publishers and admin partners the royalties that they're due. To date, the MLC has already distributed over $2.5 billion in total royalties and has nearly 50,000 members worldwide. If you're a songwriter, composer, lyricist, with music streaming or a publisher and admin, you need to become a member of the MLC to ensure you're not leaving any money on the table. Best of all, membership is completely free, and the MLC pays out 100% of the royalties it brings in. Visit themlc.com to learn more.
They do such good work over there. Absolutely. Hey, and a special thank you to Music.ai. Music.ai is a trailblazing AI-powered music and audio platform offering an expansive suite of over 50 stackable AI audio solutions. Want to change the tempo or pitch of your song, adjust instruments or vocals, mute background noise in a movie? Music.ai makes it easy. Embraced by record labels, agencies, tech firms, and developers, Music.ai is synonymous with audio innovation. With over 45 million users, their tools process over 2 million minutes of audio daily. They can process yours today. Visit music.ai to get started. Gosh darn, again, wonderful tools. And once you can jump in and start using them, you are hooked forever.
Yeah.
Speaking of hooked forever, I get to hang out with the man, the myth, the man who brings the boogie. Jay Gilbert, he's a music industry consultant. He's the curator of the weekly Your Morning Coffee newsletter and a former executive with Universal Music, Sony Music, and Warner Music Groups. And when he travels, he gets to go into the lounge.
Yeah, I do. And I've never been accused of bringing the boogie, but I like that. I get to do the show every week with my dear friend Mike Etchart, who is now getting over a cold. Thankfully, he's feeling much better. Longtime host of Sound and Vision Radio, formerly of SST Records, Warner Music, Capital EMI, and Universal Music Group. And before we started the podcast today, we talked for about an hour, and one of the most fun things we get to do every week is tell those old war stories. And maybe one of these days we'll have to do an episode on some of the war stories of working some of the jobs within major labels that we've worked with.
Yes, in the crazy years, for sure. Well, let's jump into some of the major stories, Jay. The first one from The Guardian. It's by Liz Pelly. We know Liz Pelly.
Yeah.
The article, Pay to Get Playlisted, the accusations against Spotify's discovery mode. In November of 2020, Spotify published an opaque headline on its company blog entitled Amplifying Artist Input in Your Personalized Recommendations. The post introduced a new program called Discovery Mode, which would ask artists to accept lower royalty rates in exchange for algorithmic promotion. Wow,
Yeah.
I remember that.
Yeah, it was pay to play, but Spotify introduced the scheme using neutral language. Artists would be able to, quote unquote, identify music that's a priority for them, okay, which would become one of thousands of data inputs, influencing how Spotify delivers, quote, the perfect song for the moment just for you. Rather than charge an upfront fee, labels or rights holders agree to be paid a promotional recording royalty rate for streams and personalized listening sessions where Spotify provided this service.
Right, so participating artists and labels take a 30% royalty reduction on tracks enrolled in the program when they are discovered through its channels. Only tracks more than 30 days old are eligible. Notably, there have been no signs that Spotify plans to publicly label which songs are enrolled, a lack of disclosure that has caused many music advocacy groups, to liken discovery mode to the radio payola of the 1950s, which was eventually outlawed by the U.S. Federal Trade Commission. Though the company points out that it has published a broad guide to understanding recommendations on Spotify, including a paragraph on commercial considerations.
Right, and there's a link to this, those understanding recommendations on Spotify in this article, which is in your morning coffee. Internally, discovery mode success has been measured by the percentage of total artists who were onboarded and how much cash this was saving Spotify. By 2023, Spotify employees celebrated an exciting discovery mode milestone. According to a review of company Slack messages, more than 50% of what Spotify calls tier 2 to 3 artists, those with annual royalties between $50,000 and $500,000, they had tried discovery mode. Last year, we set out with an ambitious goal of getting 30%, an employee wrote. Surpassing 50% felt beyond our wildest dreams, and yet here we are. Congrats all.
Wow, those are big numbers. According to Kevin Erickson, the director of the Future of Music Coalition, many of the issued artists faced in the streaming era, including what has been characterized as digital payola, are antitrust issues that both the Federal Communications Commission, the FCC, and the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC, have the power to take on as unfair methods of competition because they suppress wages and contribute to an anti-competitive market.
Right. And as deceptive practices, because people don't know whether they're listening to a song due to a curated recommendation or a business relationship, right? If they're paying for it. In addition, Erickson noted that the FTC could also contribute to a more equitable streaming landscape by investigating the major label record deal contracts, that they have with Spotify that are locked up by NDAs, non-disclosure agreements. It's easy for you to say, as well as any contracts digital service providers hold with aggregators and stock music providers. And this was a great piece written by Liz Pelly. There's a lot more to it if you want to read the whole thing, but we did a special episode with Liz Pelly recently. You can find it, wherever podcasts are sold. But do check that one out. We had a great conversation with her about her book, Mood Machine, and we talk about some of these things.
Right. Well, and, it's amazing that we're still talking about these things. I mean, the payola scandals happened in the 1950s. Here we are 60 plus years later, and these issues still pop up with what could be sort of non-competitive practices by a lot of these organizations.
Right. And just know that the majors aren't playing this game. This is only for maybe the DIYs, the DistroKid, CD Baby, TuneCore. Dear Lord, I need another cup of coffee. It's, if you look at the majors, they're not allowing their artists to participate in discovery mode because they consider it to be payola. So another great piece from Liz Pelly, and we'll be watching this really closely.
For sure. All right, another great story from Music Business Worldwide by Murray Stassen. Michael Rapino confirms Live Nation ticketing talks with Spotify, Apple, and Amazon for superfan tiers. Live Nation President and CEO Michael Rapino confirmed that news on the company's earnings call on this last Thursday, February 20th, in response to a question about labels and DSPs who have recently come to agreements that may allow for super premium tiers that's in parentheses, and how live music will fit into those offerings.
Yeah, here we go. Rapino said that we've been working with all three of them, meaning Spotify, Apple Music, and Amazon, trying to find a model that may work for us and them, and we assume they're talking to others as well.
Right, the confirmation arrives a few days after Bloomberg reported that Spotify's long-touted Super Pro tier could arrive this year and that early access to concert tickets could be one of the perks, plus AI-powered remix features and higher fidelity audio.
Yeah, which we just talked about in a previous story. The report suggested that Spotify is considering charging up to $5.99 more per month on top of a premium subscription to access this tier. An individual premium subscription is currently $11.99 in the U.S., following the most recent price rise, which was in June of 2024. This would bring the combined cost of the premium subscription plus the Super Pro add-on to around $18 a month. I wonder, Mike, I really wonder if people will adopt that and they will pay more. And again, you and I both think that streaming is underpriced. You know, are these add-ons the thing that will make people pay more? It'll be interesting to see what the adoption rate is.
For sure, for sure. Bloomberg reported a few days ago that Spotify has secured the rights from many of its partners, in quotation marks, to roll out the features included in Music Pro. Bloomberg suggested over the weekend, however, that Spotify doesn't yet have rights from Sony. Spotify has in recent weeks renewed its licensing deals with Warner Music Group and Universal Music Group.
Right. And in a related story, if you saw the piece in Billboard by Glenn Peoples, the headline was Live Nation earned a record $23.1 billion in revenue last year. So through mid-February, 2025 stadium shows are up 60% from the prior year period, and 65 million tickets have been sold for Live Nation concerts. That's a double-digit increase.
God, it's crazy.
Yeah.
A busy year in high-margin amphitheaters and arenas pushed concert promoter Live Nation to a record $2.15 billion in adjusted operating income. In 2024, that's up 14% on record revenue of $23.16 billion, which is up 2%. Man,
wow,
big numbers.
Big increases. In the concerts division, full-year revenue rose 2% to $19 billion. Despite having 30% fewer stadium shows in 2024, the total number of fans grew to over a record 151 million. From nearly 55,000 Live Nation events, and that's up over 9% year over year. A heavy slate of concerts at arenas and amphitheaters where Live Nation can offer VIP experiences and capture more revenue from food and beverage sales. That really helped that number climb 65% to $529 million, and margin as a percentage of revenue to reach a record 2.8%. The margin was nearly 3%. That's crazy.
Yes, Live Nation is expecting 2025 will top its record-setting 2024. Through mid-February, stadium shows are up 60% from the prior year period, and 65 million tickets have been sold for Live Nation concerts. That's a double-digit annual increase. Ticketmaster's transacted ticketing revenue for 2025 shows is up 3% to 106 million tickets, due mainly to an increase in concert demand.
Yeah, and that's the bottom line. I know we threw a lot of numbers at you, but they're all increasing exponentially. And currently, Live Nation stadium tours for 2025 include a few artists you may be familiar with. Beyonce's Cowboy Carter tour, Morgan Wallen's I'm the Problem tour. Love the title of that. Kendrick Lamar and SZA's Grand National tour, and Post Malone and Jelly Roll's Big Ass Stadium tour.
That's right. I want the T-shirt for the Big Ass Stadium Tour. Before we do our last story, Jay, let's thank our sponsors because, again, we have so many wonderful ones, and we are so lucky to have them.
Yeah, we sure are. We'd like to give a special shout-out to Hypebot. Since 2004, Hypebot has chronicled the new music industry and the trends and technologies that are changing how music is discovered, consumed, marketed, and monetized. Edited daily by founder Bruce Houghton with help from Alana Bonilla. Hypebot and sister blog Music Think Tank are published by live music discovery and marketing platform Bands in Town.
Indeed, bands in town, which is how I find all the concerts that I end up going to, even ones I didn't think I knew about. Over 90 million live music fans trust Bands in Town to get personalized concert alerts, recommendations, and messages from their favorite artists. It's the #1 artist service platform connecting over 650,000 artists with their superfans. Managers, labels, agencies, and artists access their own dashboard to manage and promote their tour dates across all platforms. Big thanks, Hypebot, Bands in Town. Dang it, couldn't do it without them.
Yeah.
Our last story, Jay, it's TikTok and Luminate released the latest Music Impact Report. TikTok publishes the Music Impact Report, the second Music Impact Report commissioned by TikTok in partnership with Luminate, the trusted source of entertainment data and research.
Yeah, it sure is. This Music Impact Report, which you'll find in the Your Morning Coffee newsletter this week, it analyzes data from 2024. It considers the impact that TikTok and its users have on the music industry and artists in terms of music discovery, consumption, chart success, and contribution to industry revenue.
Right. So the report studied TikTok and its users' impact on artists and the music industry across a number of areas, including music discovery, off-platform value generation, music streams, superfans, and chart success. The report, which studied U.S. and global data, concluded that TikTok is a key driver of music discovery, monetization, and chart success.
Yeah,
No
to
surprise.
say the least. And you and I are going to talk about a couple of stats here that are just mind-boggling. The report also includes analysis of artist success stories on TikTok, studying examples of superstar artists, breakthrough artists, and catalog artists, including Chappell Roan, Sabrina Carpenter, Korn, and Alphaville.
Right. So the report's key findings include the following. Yeah, how about this? TikTok drives music discovery. Well, yeah. U.S. TikTok users are 74% more likely to discover and share new music on social and short-form video platforms than the average short-form video user. TikTok generates value off-platform.
Another of the report's key findings is that U.S. music listeners who use TikTok are 68% more likely to use a paid-for music streaming subscription than the U.S. general population. TikTok's Add to Music app feature has generated more than 1 billion track saves since its rollout in 2024. TikTok users in the U.S. spend 46% more money on music each month than the average U.S. music listener.
Right. No surprise. TikTok attracts high-spending music superfans. U.S. music superfans are almost twice as likely to be on TikTok. U.S. music superfans on TikTok spend more money on music than even the average U.S. music superfan.
Right. And finally, TikTok positively impacts music streams. No shock there, but there are a couple of data points we're going to go into. TikTok correlated artists experience higher growth in their on-demand streaming over the year versus artists whose TikTok engagement is less related to streaming volumes. On average, TikTok correlated artists see an 11% week-over-week streaming growth rate compared to just 3% for other artists. TikTok total views are significantly related to streaming volumes for 96% of artists analyzed. Let me throw that one at you again. TikTok total views are significantly related to streaming volumes for 96% of the artists analyzed.
96%. God dang it.
Yeah.
TikTok impacts chart success. 84% of all songs that entered the Billboard Global 200 this year went viral, i.e. had a high period of high engagement on TikTok beforehand. 84% of all songs entering the Global 200. Yikes. That's just staggering numbers. Staggering.
I mean, think about that for a second. That is such a big percentage. And that's, like you just mentioned, that's of the Billboard Global 200, 84% of them went viral through TikTok first. We're going to see what happens with TikTok. You know, it's still all in flux right now. A lot of talking going on. I'm anxious to sort of see how this plays out because let's face it, this report makes it very clear how important TikTok is to the music industry.
It is, absolutely. Well, listen, we got to wrap up the show. If you enjoy the show, please tell one friend. Jay and I would certainly appreciate it. Big thanks to the MLC, Music.ai, Hypebot, and Bands in Town. We certainly appreciate their participation all the time. And so on that, on behalf of my good friend Jay Gilbert, I'm Mike Etchart. Thanks for listening in, and we'll be back next week on the Your Morning Coffee Podcast.
You've been listening to Your Morning Coffee, the weekly music news program for the new music business. Join Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart next time for the digital music news you need to know.